Hello, this is my final project for our Intro to Sparta class. My name is Ben Rude, and in this project I'm going to be comparing the movie The 300 Spartans to actual real-life Sparta. So we were shown really good examples of Spartan values at the very start of this movie. When Agathon is captured by the Persians and is almost killed by Xerxes, but is actually spared and told that he needs to go on and warn the rest of Greece of the size of his army. They mention in the movie that he exhausted their two best torturers without talking, and this is the show's kind of what the Spartans were about. It showed their culture. I thought the movie did really good at portraying that early in this scene. And it just showed Agathon as a very tough human being. This was an interesting scene to me as well. It shows Agathon running into another former Spartan in Xerxes' camp. This is their interaction.
Not with him. You know, after all, Demaratus was once our king in Sparta before he was exiled.
I'm not interested in Demaratus. Kings have their ways, but you are in the camp of our enemies, and therefore an enemy of Greece.
You know my son Philo in Sparta, don't you? Yes. Please give him a message from me. Tell him not to judge me until he knows all the facts.
So yeah, basically, Agathon, noble Spartan. I'm not sure if this part was generally true. There's nothing I could really find about it in any of our readings and texts, so that was one thing I thought was kind of off, but it made for the good storyline. Agathon being the noble Spartan he is, and of course setting up a traitor in Sparta is what the movie is doing early. This next part was pretty interesting to me because I thought the movie did a really good job of getting the history right. It shows Demaratus talking to Xerxes, and Xerxes questioning him about the Spartans because Demaratus, being an old Spartan, he knows their people. In the movie, here, I'll play it.
You really believe that Sparta will fight?
Hello. We wish the truthful answer or the favor.
Don't tell me the truth, I shall hold it against you.
The Spartans will fight, even if the rest of Greece submit.
How can they fight or do anything together?
So basically, Xerxes asks Demaratus for an answer on if the Spartans will fight against all of his troops because he knows now that the spy has seen them, Agathon. So he's hoping that Agathon goes back and tells Sparta and kind of scares them because of all of the troops and everything. And Demaratus kind of quickly warns him, this is nothing the Spartans will be afraid of. They will fight no matter what. In Herodotus, the histories, the exact same thing is asked by the king. He gets kind of upset. Demaratus answers, I knew before I began that I spoke the truth. You would not like it. This only upsets Xerxes more because he knows he just doesn't understand that Spartans are willing to fight even when they know it's basically a death situation. Like, they kind of know they're going to die. This confuses Xerxes, and it kind of angers him when Demaratus tells him. Next, the movie goes on to the Corinth conference, in which the Spartans and the Athenian politician Themistocles kind of wins over Greece. It wasn't easy, though. There were a couple people in the meeting that were opposed to the idea and wanted to fight separately. This is what happened.
Sparta will fight. Whether others will follow or not.
Obviously, Spartans leading this fight is what the rest of Greece wanted to hear. This is what really unites them. Leonidas kind of does this by speaking shortly, which I thought was accurate too. He didn't say anything that was unneeded. He basically just got in there, said the right stuff. in united Greece. This part, I'm not going to play a clip, but this is when the movie kind of started to get a little inaccurate. I couldn't find anything other than this movie about a man named Philon. They kind of added him in this movie to serve as kind of a love story, someone to root for, and this is the first time he's introduced in the movie. This is inaccurate. This was not mentioned in any other reading. This is the part in the movie where Leonidas, they get the message back from the Oracle, kind of telling them what is supposed to happen in the upcoming war.
Dwellers in glorious Sparta, hear now the words of your fate. Either your famous city goes down in front of the Persians, or, if your city is spared, the land of Sparta must mourn for the death of one of her kings.
So yeah, this part was actually extremely accurate, as this actually was the prophecy Sparta was given by the Oracle. In Herodotus, the Histories, on page 493, they actually read this. They actually read this out for you. It goes, "Hear your fate, O dwellers in Sparta of the wide spaces. Either your famed great town must be sacked by Persia's sons, or, if that be not, the whole land of Lacedaemon shall mourn the death of a king of the horse of Hercules." So this kind of shows this was very serious back then. They took these oracles very serious. So basically Leonidas at this point understands that he is the king that is going to go out in battle. He kind of now thinks that he is going to die, and this is actually what happened. This is accurate. Following up on this part, basically the Spartans were in a religious festival during this time, so Leonidas kind of is forced to leave out with his personal guard of only 300 men. And that kind of sets the scene up for the movie, and kind of is actually what happened. Him and his 300 men set off on their way to Thermopylae. The next part is where the movie kind of goes off track with history again. It goes back to the love story with Philon. In this part, he's asking permission of Leonidas that he marry this girl. Philon is ultimately denied because, and stripped of his red cape as well in this scene, because basically his father was the one that Agathon saw in the Persian camp. So Leonidas says he will not have, while it wasn't his fault for his father's actions, he will not be serving in the front line. This kind of absolutely tears at Pylon, and in the next scene it even shows him sitting on a cliff and considering killing himself, because that's all Spartans really wanted. They wanted to defend their country, and being stripped of this was a big blow for Pylon. Even though this is inaccurate, it kind of showed it was accurate in the sense that a Spartan warrior would take this blow this hard. All they wanted to do was fight for their country. The next scene shown in this is after Elas found Philon sitting on the rock up on the cliff, and he's very upset because now he's an outcast. His own people don't even want him. They see the Spartans marching, and Elas kind of convinces Philon to go be the soldier he is. She brings him his shield and tells him, go be 301 Spartans or something like that, because he was now taken off of the war. They both end up going and following the Spartans, basically to reclaim, basically as a love story is why they both went. The movie set this up kind of to serve as something to cheer for Philon, because he was an outcast now, and it wasn't really anything he could do about it. So when the Spartans arrive to Thermopylae, it kind of shows them all kind of getting to the narrow pass, and then them kind of sitting there and just kind of waiting for the Persians. While that's happening, it goes back to the other little side story with Pylon and Elas. and Alas is very sick from the trek they just made. She hadn't eaten in days, so they come across this goat farmer, and she's healed up there. This is all inaccurate. This is all added for the movie. It just kind of served as just another side story, I guess. It was another journey of Philon. It was kind of him and the goat farmer served to be great people. They served as great Greeks, as Leonidas called the goat farmer later in the movie. The goat farmer also warns Philon of an old goat track around through the mountains that was a much more difficult track than going through Thermopylae, but it served as a different pass, and this proved to be important later on. This next part, being completely inaccurate, was just added to the movie because it made for more action. Basically, this is where Philon redeems himself. The Spartans and 30 men, Leonidas, they actually go to the camp of Persians at night, and they set fire to a bunch of the king's tents, hoping to delay them so they can help build the wall over at Thermopylae a little better. This didn't happen, but it made for good movie, I guess. In this scene, actually, Philon runs back to save his injured Spartan, and Leonidas actually turns around as well to come help. After this, there's Leonidas going in to help again. So basically, they rescue their injured Spartan brother, but this part was important for the movie because Philon is kind of granted his position of being a Spartan soldier back. He's given a cape and everything again, because Leonidas realizes how loyal he is to his country and everything. This was just important for the movie's sake. This didn't actually happen. Very soon after that last part of them destroying the Persian camp, Leonidas gets news that the rest of Sparta is actually not coming, and all the Spartans there kind of realize that this is where they will die. It's at this point where it kind of falls over Leonidas. It shows him looking off in the distance, kind of sad, but he kind of knows his fate. He knows that it is his duty to fight the Persians, in this time at Thermopylae. In the next scene, Hydarnes, who was a Persian commander at the time, he led the Immortals, came to talk to Leonidas in the movie. He talks to him and tells him basically the king will spare Sparta if they surrender, because of they were being such a thorn in the back of the king at this time. Leonidas responds with something witty by saying if the arrows block out the sun, they will fight in the shade, or something like that, which is exactly what a Spartan king would say in this type of situation. So I thought that was accurate. I don't think Hydarnes actually had the opportunity to talk to Leonidas. I don't think that is accurate, but it made for a good movie. In this next scene, it's the battle in which the Immortals are attacking. They try to use chariots in a small pass, but they don't work. Another thing I thought was kind of inaccurate was the way the Spartans were lined up. They were all in very long, straight lines with no one really at their back. This was inaccurate. The Spartans didn't really battle like this, especially when they only had 300 men. A break in the line would have caused people to be able to flood through. Usually they were deeper than one person. So I thought this was a little inaccurate, but this scene did a good job of showing how battles actually played out in Thermopylae, how there was not enough space for chariots and horses like the Persians were trying to use. This next part, it shows one of the men that was staying with the goat farmer. He actually goes to Xerxes in hopes of becoming rich and telling him about the old goat path that the old man had told Philon about earlier in the movie. This kind of sets up what actually happened, because in the end the Spartans were eventually outflanked while they were holding up the front, and they couldn't hold up the back. They were not Spartan soldiers, of course. The 300 were up front fighting. But in the movie, I'm not sure if I don't think an actual goat farmer or a man like such was the one who went and showed the Persians this, but in the movie it was a good way of kind of setting the Persians up for what actually was about to happen. This is a scene where Leonidas learns that the Persians are kind of outflanking him. They're going through the pass and the mountains. He tells Philon and Alas to leave. Philon doesn't like this, but of course he's just a part of the movie. He just his role was to be a messenger, tell Greece about the rest of, not to get cut off, I guess, to retreat. Leonidas himself, he refuses to because the noble Spartan he is. The movie did a really good job of getting this part right because in Herodotus, the Histories, he talks about how all except the Thespians and Thebans who remained with the Spartans, the Thebans were detained by Leonidas as hostages, but the Thespians of their own, the Thespians were there just to help him out. They were the ones who actually held up the rear and fought those people coming through the pass. The movie actually did that right. They had the Thespian leader there and his men. They were proving to be good Greeks as well and stand and fight with Leonidas. This is the final scene of the movie as well as the final part of my final project. In this, they show the final battle of Thermopylae. In Herodotus, the Histories, it did a really good job of showing this part was actually accurate by the movie. Herodotus writes, the Greeks who knew the enemy were on their way around by the mountain track, and death was inevitable, put forth all their strength and fought with fury and desperation. By this time, most of their spears were broken, and they were killing Persians with their swords. In the course of that fight, Leonidas fell, having fought most gallantly, and many distinguished Spartans with him. Their names I have learned as those men who deserve to be remembered. This part was accurate in the movie because, like said in the book, they tried multiple times to recover his body, which they were successful in pushing them back and getting his body. In the movie, they are finally encircled, and they're actually given the choice to live, which I don't think was accurate. I do not think the rest of the Spartans were given the choice to live by the Persians. But in the movie, they did the Spartan thing anyway and decided to die with their king. In the final scene, they're just sitting there getting gunned down by arrows, and eventually all 300 Spartans fall. That's the end of my final presentation. Thank you for a great semester.